All right. This is the April 2018 Human Resources Committee. We'll start off with the staffing report.
I don't have anything unusual to report on that. You'll see under the certified retirements we have 16 names there, and the question that comes up, we have 29 total retirements for the 17-18 year. 5 of those have already happened, like around semester time or whatever, but I think we're going to get a few more trickling in. We'll be in the 30s, my guess is, by summer. So.
Member Oswald.
So that was a certified, yes.
I just thought that someone sent the whole board, and you is he going to be included in the retirement? He's
included in this number, yes.
Okay. Yep. I kind of giggled. That
actually,
it was like, thanks for letting me know.
Yeah. We did have an April 1st cutoff date, and it was dated April 1st, but that fell on a Sunday, and then that next week was off, so we were accepting them into today. So.
Thanks. Any other questions? No? Other action items?
Okay, on your HR report, you're going to see the hourly substitute pay rate sheet. And then under community education, the very bottom of that first square up there, it says retired community schools coordinator, driver's ed coordinator. We're adding this in as a new position. It previously was a person who was part of the DWIA unit and did community ed and driver's ed. He's instituting what's called a phased retirement right now, so they can work a certain number of hours, and we established a pay rate for that. It'll be less than 14 hours a week, and that will be the pay rate for that position. So that is A.
That is A. All right. And anything on B?
So Member Oswald and I met last Monday to go over some of the information that she had requested regarding hourly types of appointments and potentials for how we could work toward getting a pay increase for them. And I provided her with some information. I would just like to say again, as I told her, I'm a little leery about providing only to the hourly and not our subs and others too, because it creates kind of that, hierarchy of some of us are a little higher than others, but, that's for you guys to discuss, that isn't for me. But a couple of the areas that we discussed is I provided a short list, which I can provide to the whole board unless Member Oswald has already done so. I provided her with a list of the ones that appeared to be titles of our hourly, which truly are working 14 hours or less on a consistent basis. They're not signing up just a sub. And then also provided what the increase would be for those individuals if we did a 1% increase. And then if we were to look at something in regard to an annual increases versus a step. So initially the request was to kind of look at how could we have some type of a step increase, but that creates a lot of questions in regard to how many hours do they have to work? Do they have to have started work by a certain date? How do we accumulate those hours and figure those out? What happens if they stop working for a year and then come back, and all those various pieces. So, but that's basically it. I again would like to say that I think that if you're going to consider something that we would want to be looking at all of the temporary type positions.
Member Oswald.
Thank you, and I want to say thank you to both Tim and Linda. They were great to work with, and the proposal that I forwarded to Chair Kirby, but I didn't send to you guys. I can forward that email in a heartbeat after I'm done. But it just includes an annual review to see if we have money to give them a little more. It amounts to a dime for most people, just one dime. And at the most, I guess, best case, worst case scenario, the cost of that will total at the most $5,500, which is really a tiny amount to cover all about 100 employees that are covered by this. It would be covered coming out of school budgets and I feel that when you divide that cost by 13 schools where those employees are, that's a manageable amount for a principal to absorb. If we choose to do it that way, we can change it to see how we want to pay for it, but that's the way I believe our hourlies are paid anyway. And the amount is so small that it will never butt up against any union jobs, which is very important. The collective bargaining agreements will always be well ahead of whatever raises are possible. And I just think it's the least we can do for these employees. And it's something, I say the least we can do because it's so small. I'd love for it to be more, but it's what it is that we can afford in a time that our financial state is, where everybody under the sun right now is getting raises by passing their union agreements. Let's include some other people. I'd be open to including subs, maybe at some point in the future, maybe now, but we've only prepared for the non-sub hourly employees.
The 5,500 was the estimate based upon the 10 positions that are classified that I sent out and that I provided information on that are truly our hourly. So I could read just a few of those since you guys all don't have it. But it would be like the cafeteria playground monitors, the career center coordinator, the hourly clerical, the parent involvement coordinator, and then our key zone type preschool, younger workers, okay? So that's just kind of a general list of those, and there was only 10, and so you're not looking at all of our subs or all of our workers in that 5,500 approximate. And then that could change based upon how many each school hires and whether or not they, use some of their additional funds to hire some additional playground monitors, or if they decide they, need some other assistance and have funding for that. So,
Member Lowfall.
Just a clarification, Member Oswald, is at the early part of this idea or this position, I thought we were talking about hourlies that have spent so many years in our district that we were going to honor them and that we were going to I thought that was the direction, and I know from some of the positions that Linda just read that some of those positions are not all that many years in our district. I think of exactly like the career coordinators, so have we moved away from that idea that we're going to give hourly raises to some staff that just need hourly raises, but not contingent on to how many years they've served?
The issue of determining how many years somebody has becomes the problem. Mm-hmm. It's a challenge for us in trying to decide where do we cut it off. Mm-hmm. So if it's because I've worked as a parent involvement coordinator for 4 years, or is it because I did it 3.5 years, or because I did it 4.5 years? So that's kind of the challenge. Okay. And then you would have 2 different pay grades for a parent involvement coordinator doing the same or similar work. And so that's where the step was initially discussed, about having somebody starting at one step and then moving up. And so those challenges that I talked about earlier in regard to how do you determine it? Are you determining it by the number of hours they work? What happens if they don't work 1 year and then they come back and work 3? So there's some challenges there to try to have to deal with.
And I'd just like to follow up on that there are challenges in processing payroll, that it's not fully automatic, and the cost of that and the ideas of that are beyond what we want to do now. This is truly something just simple. And for the cost of $5,000-$6,000, maybe hopefully a little bit more if helpers are hired, I think will serve us well in trying to attract people that don't want to say they're working for minimum wage. I also want to comment that this was also the least The way that we could do this would affect HR staff the least. That was the easiest way for them to just review and assign. It doesn't take a lot of their time, and I want to be respectful of their time with, how they can get it done. In different ways. We're talking lots and lots of man hours. Here we're talking an hour or 2 or 3. So I think that's very respectful of our capacity.
Member Lofold?
I think Kemp was first.
Oh, Member Lafayette, I'm sorry.
Kate is before Al. Okay. Linda, can you just talk a little bit about, expand a little bit more on your comments about just kind of fairness, I guess, with not raising some rates and raising others that you talked a little bit about?
So sometimes you may have a person who does a couple of different things for us. So they may be an hourly para, or they may be an hourly parent involvement coordinator, and then they may also do some subbing for somebody at a school. So they currently would probably have pretty close to the same pay rate. But if we start off on one side, they may have that question, well, I got the increase here, but I didn't over here, and so why am I not getting it on the other side? And then also, again, if it's truly that you want to go with only subs, not having an increase, the other ones that we didn't increase were like the retirees that are already connected to a bargaining unit type of those. So individuals who come back that have been retired, you'll see like under the maintenance, it'll say comes back at collective bargaining unit step 2, or even like in our clerical, it says they come back at the collective bargaining agreement at the office support specialist step 1. So those aren't included either. So, but that's just, again, just something that you guys have to think about and be able to answer.
Just a follow-up question. Just are there any other concerns, either Tim or you, on just the processing of this that you think we should know about in terms of additional work for staff, or just the whole processing of it?
Yeah, right now on these hourly positions below less than 14 hours, we do what's called a registration form, usually at the site. They're not like brought in, well, we do their new hire paperwork, but they're kind of hired and applied at the site. And it's possible, like in a playground monitor, you might be a sub-playground monitor, which we don't call a sub, but you're a playground monitor and maybe only work 2 or 3 times a year. And is that a year of service? Is that a year of, kind of along those lines? So there's no, again, kind of getting back into record keeping, we really don't have a real thorough knowledge of how many hours they actually might be putting in a year, but I do believe there's a desire to pay them fairly. So.
Member Lofold?
So just some insight that I have a little bit, and I know it might sound, I don't know how it's going to sound, but so once Linda read some of the jobs that would fall in these 10, from my experience in our schools, our career centers and our parent volunteer, they're incredible people. And when they first really started to come into our district, they came as volunteers. And they understood that role because we needed them. And not to deny that, there are incredible people in our community that once they enter our school, they love doing what they do, and they go well beyond what a volunteer does. So then we started to, we created a position, and I'd love for the board, if we're going to go any further down this road, we better look at really where that job description comes from and how we really look at those positions, because they really did start. Career Center and Parent Volunteer were volunteer positions, and they haven't really been stipend all that many years, but their role has become important to us, and to do without it would not be fun either. That career centers at our high schools are nice places, and they serve the community well. Our parent volunteer coordinators are valuable reaching out to our community, but they did start as volunteer positions. And then now even the pay that they get, they do more than they're told to do. And so I know that it sounds disingenuous of me. I know that we all deserve a fair pay and we deserve a raise, even if it's just a dime. But yet they're working beyond what we probably contract them. They're working beyond their job description. And so we have to be careful about that. And then do we really want to get into that? Do you want to say, well, get out of here because, you know, your hours are up and we're not going to pay you 10 cents more? No, we don't. But yet I want to bring at least that side to it.
Member Oswald?
Parent Involvement Coordinator has been around a long time. I'm not sure if you're confusing parent volunteers that just come into the building, but the Parent Involvement Coordinator position has been around 20 years at least.
And it has been paid. It was a volunteer.
The parent Involvement Coordinator position was required at one time by Title I funds, and that's a paid position. It's always been a paid position. So I'm confused as to you know, maybe a volunteer just took on more because they had nothing to do and hanging around and that kind of stuff too, which is wonderful. I don't want to turn anybody away.
Or maybe yeah.
So my point is that you're saying they do more than even what they're paid to do. I agree. And I think that if we can give them a dime more for what we pay them to do, I think they deserve it.
Member Loeffler-Kemp?
Yeah, and I just had another follow-up question, Tim or Linda. How many do you have a sense of how many people who maybe start out in these positions end up moving into our part-time or full-time or bargaining unit kind of positions? Can you just kind of share a little bit about that?
I don't know that I have a number, but I do know that often, at least in the playground, cafeteria playground monitor role, they generally will have students at the schools. And so they're only looking for part-time when their students are at the schools. But I would say that we probably occasionally have some that move into the para role. Don't know exactly how many. The Career Center and the parent involvement, I don't know that we have enough of those to be able to say that some have moved or some haven't. It might be possible, but I don't know offhand. Trying to look. Yeah, I don't think there's a great deal of them. I don't think there's a great deal that move into the other roles, but then again, you know, I don't have a number.
Thank you.
All right, I'll move on to item 2C.
Okay, that's the approval of the collective bargaining agreement for the Duluth District-wide Instructional Administrators Association. And that was sent out electronically to you earlier. Some of the highlights on that, we changed basically the dates to update the agreement for a 3-year agreement. Cleaned up some language on probation and discipline under it's 2.7. At one point in time, that unit was there was another part of that unit that when we split with Lake Superior College that went up to that area. So that was old language that had been in there for that period of time. We updated the definition of family like we have in all of our contracts. Their grievance procedure used to have a step 1 and then right to arbitration. We added a step 2 in there. So I can tell you in the 15 years I've been here, we've not had one grievance from this particular unit, but just in order to have a 3-step process, we did add that. The language that we updated for the eligibility for the healthcare savings plan, they asked for a calculation of how that plan works, so we added that. And then again, the salaries are 1, 1.5, and 2 for the 3 years. So those are the highlights. They have not voted on this yet. They plan on doing so this week. If there is not a vote or if it is not passed this week, then we'll pull it for next week. I don't anticipate an issue with that, though.
Member Lafleur-Kemp?
Yeah, thank you for sending it out ahead of time. Maybe I missed it, but how many members are in this unit again?
If there are 20, that would be on the high end.
Okay.
I'd say somewhere around 15.
Any further questions?
Can you tell me what these 15 are? They're the clerical administrative assistants in our school district?
No, they would. A lot of people in this area are involved with community education. Are the Key Zone? No. On the community involvement coordinators, so the community schools, a few of those are the members. Head Start, so Pam Reese, Jay Rossler with community education. Yep. Career and technical education. And, oh yes, education equity and Indian education.
All right. That concludes our Human Resources Committee meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and get the business committee meeting begun, and we will start with the highlight of the day, the financial report, and I will turn it over to CFO Hassler to walk us through that financial report.
Thank you. In our financial report section, we have our now new standardized financial report document, and also a monthly update on the APU projections. And I would like to give particular attention to the continued growth in enrollment that we're experiencing this year. Now, if you look at it compared to last month, you will see it tracking down a little bit, which is an ordinary occurrence as we go deeper into the school year, but we continue to be about 100 students or more over last year's enrollment counts as of this point in time, and we are hopeful that that trend will continue right up through the end of the year and continue into future years as well.
A question on the, let's see where we're at. With the general fund unrestricted dollars, with the percent of budget remaining in the levy being 7%, which is significantly lower than a lot of our other ones, can you kind of walk us through, will you explain that to me, please? How that's calculated and if that has any potential ramifications as we wrap up the school year and our budget year? I'm on page 7 or 8. I can't tell because they're not numbered. Oh, it is? I don't see it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Okay, so yeah, so 7. I guess it's 7 and 8, but 7.
The levy that supports our fiscal year 18 budget has effectively already been collected. The payments that are received in 2017 cover our fiscal year 18. Now, when we get down towards the end of the year, we do, on occasion, receive an update or a revision from the county, I believe, and so there is some potential that those numbers could move yet, but at this point in time, that is reflective of what we've received to date as compared to what was originally adopted.
So it's standard that it would be that low at this time of the year, 7%?
Well, it would certainly be low because ideally it would be 0, which would reflect that everything that was adopted has been collected. Okay. So right now, that would suggest that we are falling a little short of 100% of collection, but I don't have a complete understanding of what our historical collections have been, as well as what potential might exist for revision in terms of what the county might report to us.
I can address that if you'd like. Every July we get a report from the county showing all the taxes that have been paid in that year and then how they apply to what year of tax has been collected, because every year you have delinquent taxes that people don't pay. So you're collecting taxes that were levied maybe 2-3 years ago, and it goes back quite a few years it'll go. So then they record by year exactly which tax you're collecting on. So there's always a lag there of what you're collecting, because every year you're going to have delinquent taxes on there. At this point in time, this is probably pretty typical. We'll get a payment in May. Everybody pays their taxes in May, so we'll get the first half at the end of May, which will in effect be for next year's budget, but included in that payment will be some that apply to previous tax years.
Got it. Thank you.
Good question.
Any other questions on the budget? The financials, excuse me. Okay.
Moving ahead into the bids, RFPs, and quotes section, we are coming to you today with a couple of quotes, one for district-wide electrical labor and one for district-wide elevator inspection and service. Would you care to elaborate on these, Mr. Spooner?
Sure. For many years, probably close to 20, we've had T&M contracts for everything you can think of, complementing our in-house trades. We bring to you this month just a few of them, and they happen to be electrical and elevator. The electrical is used when we have projects that we're unable to do in-house or that are too large or something that would need a contractor, and the elevator is for monthly inspection and periodic breakdown. And those are I guess that's the general information related to those two items. I don't know if that covers anybody's, or all the questions.
I think the elevator one's pretty standard. The electrical labor, you said it's for things that we can't do in-house, right? So it's just
right.
For power?
It's for high and low voltage. An example might be if the superintendent told me to meet with Tanya at Denfeld because we're making a change in a computer lab, and we have $25,000 to do that, which we don't have. This is an imaginary project.
Wishful thinking.
So that's something that we would not use our in-house staff for.
Got it. Okay.
Our electricians, one way to look at it is in-house people are for deferred maintenance. Capital projects or new projects are T&M contractors, and they're funded by other sources other than my maintenance budget. Unless, I'll give you an example, and it's not even tonight, it'll be next month, but if I had arrived at work this morning and I got a call from the site engineer at East High School that there was a glycol drip from a hot water line in the ceiling of the gym, that's an 8-inch pipe, insulated, 38 feet off the floor, and it's dripping red glycol. Now that's something that our two HVAC techs, we don't have the tools, equipment, and lifts to do that. So then I would hire our approved T&M, which is going to be Jamar, and they would come out with their lift and their people, and they'd do this all the time, and they'd fix it, and they'd be out of there in 4 hours. And would come out of the maintenance budget. It's a task that we don't have the skills and the equipment to do. So it's a little bit different than like an inspection contract.
Gotcha. And just quickly on I think it was actually in both of the contracts, they both have 30-day out clause or termination clauses. Is that standard for these contracts?
It's standard for all of them.
And then one of the other questions I have is more around process. So with that contract, there was language in there that we could renew the contract for 2 additional 1-year periods if the amount is determined to be acceptable by the Director of Business Services and the Facility Business Manager. Is that common to not come back to the board for those renewals?
It's common. We use the Consumer Price Index. So if this year it's $10,000 and the CPI is 2%, and next year be $10,200, we would just if it's already been approved with the option to extend, you're granting the authority for it to be renewed if the conditions are acceptable.
Okay.
If I could, Dave, approximately how many of these agreements do we have in place?
This is off the top of my head, but I'd say between 17 and 22.
So there's a lot of those agreements out there, and they all correlate with a particular trade that may be of need to us over the course of the year. As you can see, it probably goes without saying, but I'll say it. In most instances, we don't have a particular project that we're anticipating, but this allows us to lay the groundwork for that eventuality that we may need to do some electrical work or some masonry work or something else that would go beyond the capabilities of our own staff, and it does therefore save us time from having to come back to the board at a later time and approve a unique project, and this allows us to move forward more quickly.
Yep. It's helpful to know, though, that that's how you figure renewals, and this is your job, so it's great. Okay. Any other questions on those contracts? Or bids, I guess, quotes? All right, we're cruising today. Policies and regulations.
You will notice quite a number of items listed under this agenda topic. We have on here, among others, a review of policy 212, which is the school board member development and travel expense reimbursement. This policy is, we're not proposing any changes at this time. This is for your review. And I think we would also understand this to be considered to be, I don't even know if we would call this first reading because there's really no changes. But we're certainly open to input that you would have on that. If you want me to stop and allow you time to address that, I can, or I can keep going.
I have a quick question.
Okay.
I am now aware of this policy. The question is, it doesn't cover how we solicit the approval of, how do we get the board to approve, because I know we brought this because I wanted to go to a workshop in May, and I asked, how do I do this? And so then this policy shows up. It still doesn't tell me how to do it. So do we need to clarify that in the policy on how the process or the procedure in requesting to attend a workshop as a board member? That's my question.
Well, it seems to me like we should probably clarify that. But does that get covered in a policy or a bylaw, or does that just get covered in a process development?
That was kind of my question too. Usually when you're going somewhere, there haven't been a lot of things. There's been, the MSBA or the MSBA trainings, or if someone is serving as a delegate, those have been kind of the main pieces. Otherwise, it's been, if we're providing training for staff through a grant or something, it's been that way. But we've never had a real procedure even for board members to go without bringing it to the board. So that's what we need to develop. Is it a policy? Is it a procedure? I'm not sure.
I just wanted to clarify. There's one thing to have a process to bring it to the board, and the policy says that it has to be pre-approved, and I think this is why it came up. Because then sometimes it's, if it's a thing that fills up and you can't get a spot if you wait for the board approval, that's the concern. So I think the question really is, do we need to change the language to say it doesn't have to be pre-approved, or to allow some sort of exception process that doesn't require pre-approval? To narrow it down here.
Are we talking about conferences or trainings that, say, a board member finds that aren't associated with our school board association?
Yes, it would be, in this case, it's a workshop that other staff members are going to, our spots. We really try to fill any of our spots with staff as much as we can. And so we had 20 seats available, and there are 20 staff members going. But it was, other people can go if they're paying their way. And so remember Oswald wanted to attend, and she asked, "How do I do this?" And I said, I'm not sure. So I brought it to Chair Kirby and Member Sandstead at agenda setting. And this is what we found, but we're looking to create a way for, I don't know if it's a certain dollar amount. I mean, in this instance, it's under $100. Is there a threshold that it comes to a policy? The other thing is there isn't really budget, so we'd have to put a budget in place too, and have some limits on that budget too.
I want to think about what I want to say on it.
I'll just say, I think, one, there must be a budget because we do some MSBA trainings that get paid for. So it would just have to fall within that. But two, this could maybe be a lot more efficient of a discussion if we had something to work with, if somebody would propose some language of some sort. And maybe that's not ready yet, but that would make for a much better discussion here.
Oh, sorry. Member Kirby.
Oh, thanks. I think it's not very much, as I remember. And when do you need to know by? So we ought to say something. I think that what Member Sandstead said is what we ought to do. There should be a threshold, maybe. That would be my feeling. But what that is, I don't know. And this would certainly be under that, I would think. And budget. We should have a budget for it. If it's the one that we have for MSBA, that's fine too. But it should be specified. So how soon do you need to know? That's the question.
I'm not sure.
Lots
I
of
might be filled up
unknowns.
by now. I'm not even sure. So
Okay.
That's where I'm like, I don't even know if I need to vote if I can go or not, because I need to follow up on that before next week, obviously. My other comment was, if we pay for things ourselves, can we still officially go as a school board member, or am I going as a member of the community? That's kind of where I get caught.
I think if it's school related, you're always a school board member. It's not like, yeah. I mean, none of us are going to speak as the Duluth School Board, so yeah.
Yeah, I guess I would echo what Chair Kirby's saying, that for the sense of to speed things up, we should have a threshold so that you don't have to, so that one person doesn't have to wait multiple months for a $50 conference. But I do think there needs to be some cleaner language around policies and procedures, and what can just be considered procedure, and then what needs to come to the board for a vote. So I guess I would echo what Member Sampson said, that we just need to be more specific without being overly rigid in this policy, but wanting to be safe so that if at some point we had a school board member who was taking advantage of the policy, that we had some mechanisms in place.
Yeah. I was going to just suggest maybe we, again, can make use of our school board association to see if there's some guidelines, or just to get a sense of how other school districts do it beyond the NSBA trainings.
One of the ways I would help me anyway is somewhat a historical or traditional list of things that school board members attend on a more regular basis, and options and other opportunities that come up. So, a list of here are school board related conferences that traditionally we've been represented at, and we encourage and support that. And then, and those might not need any approval because they're traditionally school board and probably traditionally offered by our Minnesota School Board Association. But then there could be a category of like either others and even some guidelines there as to what others are, so that board members have a sense that we are encouraged to or discouraged to, depending on what they are. Like I think I saw something about a National School Board Association convention or something. I'm going, oh, do you guys go there? But, and maybe, and again, if I would feel uncomfortable going when we're not healthy as a budget. And that's true of even the things offered here in our state. Is I just am concerned sometimes about our general public watching us go to a conference when we aren't in a strong budget era.
So because we don't have anything in place, does anything need to be approved for her to go, or? Go ahead.
And maybe Doug and Peggy can help me out on this. I know that there is language around this because you are required to pass a resolution when you're going to training. And so there is statute language around there has to be approval. I know one of the things that Melinda and I spoke about was, is there a resolution that we could pass maybe at the organization meeting at the beginning of the year that says we say, board members can go to training up to such and such amount without coming for a resolution, but I don't know the language of the statute well enough to be able to tell you right now if that's possible.
Yeah, that would be good to get that language. Just in terms of this particular conference, you said we already have 20 staff attending, and was it encouraged to bring your school board members at it? At some conferences, educational conferences, they do that, and I'm just kind of curious because that would also play into, I think, our going if we don't have additional, if we want to fill more slots or the conference is encouraging us to. Yeah.
Member Oswald, what is the training?
The training is May 19th, I believe.
No, what is it?
But I'm trying to look at it. It's regards to equity.
Great. So it sounds like there's a lot of additional follow-up work that we're asking district staff to provide before we continue to have a conversation on this. That's what we're getting here?
Other than perhaps we need to specifically approve Member Oswald's request next week at the meeting. So we deal with the problem before us now and then go back to make more efficient work of fixing the long-term issue.
That sounds good. Sounds like a good plan. Okay, moving on to 108.
We're going back to the drawing board on specific to the data request policy. What you have in your board packets today represents effectively the model language suggested by the Minnesota Department of Administration, which oversees on a statewide basis the Government Data Practices Act standards that exist under state law. What you have does include some edits on my part to address that policy in its model form likes to address the individual as you, such as you can request this, you can request that, and that's really out of character with our basic policy format. So I've tried to catch all those. Don't know that I have. There have been other situations where I've had to reword things, again, just to recognize the audience of how we are addressing board policies. And that's what you have. There's nothing in this that relates to anything that we've seen with other school districts. This is straight up based on the MDA model language. Again, pending possible recommendation from MSBA as to their take on this process.
And do we have, I know we've been kind of kicking the can down the road on this because we've been waiting for that. Do we have an idea? No, that's not fair. You've been working on this and I appreciate that, but we've been waiting to get that follow-up. So do we have an idea of when we can expect that from MSBA, that response?
I know I haven't checked in the last couple of weeks. Just to review, when this issue was first coming before the board in November, there was an indication from MSBA that it would be issued before the end of the calendar year. That did not happen. We made multiple contacts with them since that point in time, and they said it's still under review, so we don't have a firm estimate yet. We can check again, and I figure as soon as we get something approved, they'll come out with a new one.
Member Oswald?
I just want to thank Mr. Hassler and board leadership for listening to my concerns. I have no problem with this data request. Are we on the data request things? Am I listening right? Okay. You're all looking at me kind of confused, so I was a little perplexed. Okay. Doing 14 things at once in my head. And so as long as we still look at separate policies to address when you're the subject of the data, you have special rights, and for when you're entitled to data as part of your job. Those are two separate things, policies that have to be addressed by statute. So, and I know this policy doesn't cover that. So when we get there, we get there.
And you had asked this question to me in email form. The Minnesota Department of Administration has a model policy for that too, and my reaction to the agenda today was we had a lot of policy coming at you, so we'll get to that too in time.
I think I mentioned this last month, but I did follow up with, when I was at an NSBA training, with the person from NSBA who was working on the model policy, and basically the email was, we're still talking with legal counsel about it. We don't have a document yet to be distributed, or cannot give you a definite on when it's going to come. So, I support just moving ahead with our own and then replacing it once we have something to review from NSBA.
I think that speaks exactly to the complexity of the law. It's not Sunday comic reading. There's definitely meat in there that is really tough to get through. So I would also encourage, as I've heard through this process from other people that have interacted with me, that IPAD offers a free training for organizations to understand their data practices. So I don't know if the board would be interested in that, or administrators, or anything, but I think that's, we can all use good refreshers on what we do, because I don't know about other board members, but I get some people that come to me going, well, I'm asking you for this, but if you don't give it to me, I'll just write a data request. And it seems simple to just give it to them, but I don't know if that's still appropriate or not. And there's always those kinds of questions that pop up randomly. So I want to make sure that we're all covered in doing what we should do.
And I'd even take that a step further and say that really, because I feel the same way, there are people in our community that kind of scowl at us with data practice policies, and I don't really have a clear idea, so it might be something on our retreat date that we or just another opportunity to sit down and, like, I would really like to, kind of know examples of data requests that either fit this policy or don't fit this policy, or and are we? This does meet our legal obligations for a data policy. Policy.
It's the model. So
Okay. Okay.
Upon approval, it would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is on first reading here today.
Because even in the paper this morning, there's article about a city to the south of us that is also struggling with data privacy, data practices and requests for data, and it seems like you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you really honestly try to pursue and give the request professional look, but it's still it takes a long time, I would imagine, and people are very quick to really cast incredibly ugly comments towards organizations or cities because they're not giving that quick enough, or our community doesn't understand data privacy or data practices and what we legally can do and can't do, and we get kind of criticized for not doing what they want us to do when in actuality the policy is here. So.
I might have, but it's passed.
I just wanted to mention that there's a lot of conversations around the state and all around the country about data requests. The data requests are increasing in frequency and in size of the amount of data that's being requested, and so there's been discussion of what point is reasonable as well for expecting organizations to develop really. We've had most of our data requests have been very reasonable, and reports that we have that are either already on our website or that we have readily available. And we've had other requests that require us to spend a year on that involved tens of thousands of pages, and so I think that a lot of people are struggling with how much is okay to ask for. Some people would like to see some restrictions put on, that you could say looking for certain words or looking for certain phrases or certain topics, rather than just large general. I want every email from the district for the past 3 years. All of which would have to be redacted, but we have had very large data requests, and we continue to have them. Although in most cases they're very reasonable requests that we're able to turn around pretty quickly. But I know Doug has a list of those that we started, the tracking sheet, and so he's been working on those, but I know there are some large requests on that list as well.
Yeah, I thank you for the years I've been on the board. I know the amount of requests that have came and the time that our staff have put into that. I certainly think all of us as board members should understand data requests and the processes and the kinds we get, but kind of remind the public that who is responsible for getting that information. It's not us as board members. It's the contacts that right now we have listed, and I think these contacts are pretty standard for school districts. For who is responsible for getting them the information. But so I think training would be good, but when we're being asked, we want to make sure we send it to the right staff people.
Any other discussion on that? Okay.
So
202.
that is new policy 108, and then that is followed by the proposed deletion of policy 1016, which is the existing information request policy that has been in place for a number of years, a policy that does not track with the current statute. So those would be a coordinated approval of one, deletion of the other.
And just to clarify too, is the plan to also make that request form on the new website electronic?
I think we could do that.
Okay. Thank you. Member Oswald?
I just had a question on policy 202 that we added the addition of, designees.
I don't think we're on 202 yet.
Oh, I thought we were.
He was just talking about
Sorry.
the deletion of 1016. Nope, you're okay.
I think we're probably ready for 202.
Now we are ready. Yep. I wanted to make sure that we were all tracking the same page, that that's where we were. Yep. Okay, go ahead.
I'm going back to 212. I think that falls under bylaws in the 200s. So it should have bylaw in the title.
Good catch. Okay, bylaw 202. Member Oswald, you were speaking to the designee.
Yes, I was. My question was, I imagine it's pretty common to have designees for treasurers and clerk duties. However, does including that language in the policy forego and I can speak to this because I don't have a leadership position, so it's nothing about me personally, but say if I was treasurer or clerk, and I didn't want the designee doing my duty, would I have that option?
It seems to me, the way that I read it is the treasurer has the right of first refusal, is how I was reading it. And, I was thinking too about Treasurer Gorham, and I sat down with Mr. Hassler to discuss the role of the treasurer specifically. And, I don't think Member Gorham is depositing the funds of the school district and wants that option to flow through to district staff, so he's not running to the bank every day. So I appreciate the addition of that language of designee because it falls more in line with the current practices of the district. But I think it's a good question.
Well, thank you, but I just take your interpretation as just what it is. That's the way you read it. Is that the way that the person that's enforcing the policy is going to read it? I don't know. So, just a thought. And it doesn't affect me, so I'm okay with that.
I will say that it's surprising to me that the MSBA model policy 202 really provides for a board officer to be responsible for such tasks. And I did do some looking around. School districts of roughly our enrollment, and some of them mirror that language without change. Some of them alter it rather significantly, and I think what we're proposing to you kind of falls somewhere in between.
So I would just assume that when we put designee, it was because if for some reason Member Gorham or even Member Sandstead were gone for a month, maybe and so things needed to be done, and so it was a designee. So if the clerk was not able to meet at the meeting to do what they needed to do, that a designee would do that, which would be whoever we designate as that person. Not? Isn't that that's how I was interpreting?
That's probably a fair interpretation.
Well, thank you. You're so kind.
Now, I would compare and contrast and the participation of the board clerk in agenda setting, a task that occurs one time a month, with the task of making deposits to our financial depository. How often do we do that, Peggy?
Couple times a week at least.
Yes.
Depending on what comes in.
Realistically, I don't see, and a lot of school districts in the state, I don't realistically see a board officer undertaking and fulfilling those tasks on such a frequent basis with such significant responsibility. But we'll draft this as you see fit.
Then my feedback would be why wouldn't we decide to if you've met with Doug Hassler about the treasurer's role, why wouldn't we just take officers' responsibilities and try to zero in on what the treasurer does do for the board, period? Not put these things, not put 1, 2, and 3. If we don't want our treasurer to deposit funds for the school district, then why do we have it in his or hers or that positions? Just take it out. I don't know. And that was what you were going to go for anyway?
Well, that's what I had written down, but go ahead. I'll let Member Gorham speak first.
Fresh off my training with the Minnesota School Boards Association, there is something to the effect that this language is mirroring what's in state statute. So if you deviate from that, you may not be meeting state statute, even though it's archaic. Old language. I, for one, am grateful for the changes. And I will say, being in a room full of probably 25 to 30 treasurers, none of them were performing that function regardless of school district size. Some very small, some large. So I think we're perhaps on the right track. Yes.
To echo Member Lofald's statement, though, that was the question that I had, and it's part of the discussion that we had when we met last week or 2 weeks ago, was around cleaning up the responsibilities of the treasurer. And I would agree that I don't think that we should, if that's not ever going to be a responsibility, let's just not even include it in the bylaw. And so some of the other pieces that we did discuss were the role of the treasurer in the audit process. I think that was the one that we spoke most specifically about. But so I would agree that we should mirror the job description language that I know you all are working on with, and include that in the bylaw so that we don't have to go back and vote on this again once we update the job descriptions.
But I'll echo Member Gorham's, if it's in the state statute.
The underlying part is not in the statute.
Or designate. Right.
But,
yeah, because if that's not, so wouldn't it be something we'd want to bring forward to our state legislators to update their own state statutes so that they were not kind of making school boards across the state archaic in their language around the responsibilities? Would that be something you could talk with your state legislators about, and it would be just a simple cleanup down on their part?
What I would suggest on that is, based on my duties, I'm a member of the Minnesota Association of School Business Officials. We have exciting gatherings from time to time.
And do we have a policy?
And there are other organizations, certainly MSBA. No doubt there's a superintendent's organization, probably an organization of school administrators. Since the issue we're talking about today is not unique to Duluth, it's really encompassing the entire state. I'd be happy to carry that message to MASBO and make a suggestion that in a future year this would be very appropriate language for a cleanup. Just let's have something reflective of reality, as we all know. Mm-hmm. We don't have board officers running around the state making regular deposits of school funds. And I think that, certainly happy to work with our area legislators on this, but I think the biggest bang for our buck would be to tap into the statewide organizations that exist that are going to be able to go to the powers that be and say, the language in the statute says this, it's not happening anywhere and it really shouldn't. So that'd be my suggestion.
I would echo that. One question I have too is with regards to the addition of the language, do we need to spell out how a designee is selected, especially with the role of the treasurer? Or
In my view, the use of designee exists throughout our policies, and I'm not aware, not that I've read each and every one of them, I'm not aware that any of them really go through a process to establish how it is that designation occurs.
Is that a designee? Does the superintendent get to do that, or does the board chair get to do that?
In case you're interested, it is statute 123B14.
123B?
Yep. It's a full-on page, yeah. It's pretty much the exact language of that page you're looking at.
Chair Kirby?
Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. I was looking at the officer's responsibilities and the chair, and it says, performs all duties a chair usually performs. That's pretty vague. And we are deleting, what was it, the thing where we have what a chair is supposed to do, has done.
I think it's on 8095.
8095, right. And here at least the chair appoints committee members. Now, I don't know if that's something the chair usually performs in other places, but I was thinking we may want to have that in there somewhere. And the procedures, we have an item prohibiting recording devices being brought in. Now, I don't know if that's there, or using Robert's Rules of Order. And do we want to have it in a bylaw somewhere where that's specified? But the chair thing just seemed pretty vague.
That is pretty big. Who thought that policy wouldn't be a sizzling part of our
Member Lefferkin?
No, I'm sorry, my light.
I like this. But the Robert's Rules is somewhere else, isn't it? That we use the Robert's Rules, because I remember looking at that. And what edition?
It's in 8095. That's all
Oh,
struck.
but we're deleting that. Okay.
So I guess our request is to go back to the new proposed policy and add in some of those additional job duties, especially for the chair.
The chair has his or her power to keep discussions orderly. That's being struck, so we may want to keep.
We probably want to keep that too.
This is our first reading, so
Yep.
So would you like to see changes between now and the board meeting, or would you want those changes to occur on the second reading?
How busy is your day?
I don't think we need it for the board meeting.
No, I think we can do it for the second
It's more of a
reading.
committee
Okay,
thing
so
than the
it'll,
board meeting, yeah.
we'll get to work on it right away, but yeah, you'll see it in the next month's business committee meeting.
And I would recommend that you also reach out to the current clerk to make sure that the job descriptions there are also in line, and maybe make sure the superintendent's responsibilities are also in line, and then just highlight what changes are made for the second reading at our next committee meeting.
That's just what the superintendent usually does, right?
Right.
Just
Anything? Oh, go ahead.
maybe just a general comment is that where the duties are of all of the officers, that we keep it more complete than less. Just for clarity, and particularly having a new board with understanding the different responsibilities. So.
Any other discussion on that item? Seeing none?
I believe that the remaining policy items you see there involve deletions. of existing policy that are effectively incorporated into the proposed policy 202.
With the additions that we suggested, yeah.
I understood. Just wanted to make sure that we didn't have anything new. Yeah, okay. Everything down to the duties of the clerk and the treasurer there.
I just have one closing thing, but what we just looked at with even the vagueness of the clerk's or the chair's duty, this was taken, though, from MSBA's model policy 202. So this is what they've put out there.
It is, and I'll try not to take a lot of time to do this. The proposed deletion of 8095 started a month or two ago, and then it was suggested, we're going to be losing some language here that provides for who steps in place of the chair when that person's absent. And so, well, let's see. Oh, that's covered in board policy 202. Well, let's bring 202 up. And so that's how we got to 202. And then when you get to 202, then you see all the conflicts with all of our other existing policies in terms of our existing policy on officers and chairperson and the clerk and the treasurer. So the MSBA 202 is touching many of our existing policies, and that's kind of how we got here.
Okay. Is there another policy in MSBA where they give more definition to the role of clerk, treasurer, and
I don't
chair?
believe there is.
Okay. This just seems kind of wonky, kind of.
Could be, but it just could be a different approach in terms of our past policies. We're looking very discreetly at the duties of the treasurer alone, of the clerk alone, of the chairperson alone, and MSBA has incorporated all those into one policy.
Great, thank you.
Moving forward through the agenda into contracts, change order, and leases. We have no contracts today. We have no change orders today. And I do not have for you today the lease, but I do have an update on the draft of a lease that has been shared with the Hills, and we are looking to finalize the terms of that lease yet this week. We're looking at what the cost per square foot is for the space that they're using, confirmation of how many square feet of space they have, and also along the course of the project for the Rock Ridge project, we did end up encountering an issue with the updating of sprinkler heads. And ultimately, given our cost limitations under this project, that is something that the Hills offered to pay for. And so we are needing to incorporate that into this overall lease document in terms of their willingness to do that in return for us addressing that cost over the life of the lease, which will also be assessing a cost to them for the space that they are using.
So we're not anticipating that we will be voting on that at the next board meeting, but we'll be discussing it the next committee meeting and then moving forward? I
would seek your guidance on that. If that is a document that you see before the end of the week, is that something that you're prepared to act on, or is that something that you want more time with? And maybe it's something you'll need to pass judgment on when you see it.
Member Oswald?
I was just curious, since they've occupied our building for so long, are they paying anything to be there now, or is it going to be included in the lease that you're negotiating and they're just kind of winging it for a while?
They are not paying anything now, but we will be assessing a cost, and like I said, that lease will also be incorporating some costs that we owe to them in terms of the sprinkler work that was done.
Okay.
I would imagine we'd probably want to take a look at it first before we make the determination as to whether or not we should discuss it. But in terms of timeline, we might, I don't know what you think, Chair Kirby, if we should put it on the agenda with the option to pull it. Okay. Great. Yep. Okay.
Very good. Moving forward into the resolution section, our standard resolution on donations. We also have a proposed resolution affecting the Lowell School Forest designation. That is actually something that the board approved in June of 2017, and we thought that was all final and whatnot until the DNR recently was in contact with us to say that upon their review of our resolution that that they suggested that we make some modifications in terms of the location of the school forest specific. So that's why we are coming to you with an updated resolution.
I am here to clarify that.
Excellent. Thank you.
I've been requested. Okay.
You don't even have to read this.
Okay, I'm just going to introduce myself briefly since there's a few new faces. I'm Kristen Kloss-Mackey, and I have a first grader in the Spanish immersion program at Lowell. And we got into this program after my first grader was in preschool at a nature-based preschool in the area. And we had a group of families that were coming from that school. And we weren't sure we wanted to put our kids into kindergarten because our kids have been outside for preschool almost full days. And to put them in classrooms all day, we were hoping to get more outdoor time and stuff. And so it was a little bit of a cohesive flow from preschool to kindergarten. So we formed this group of parents where we made the naturescape at Lowell, and we planted a bunch of milkweed and got the monarch way station in our grounds, and are continuing to keep adding some nature themes, hence now the school forest. So yes, we came last year in June to get the resolution to have the area designated. And the way the program works through the DNR is you have to get your resolution first and then present it to the DNR. And so they will give you some help along the way before the resolution, but the gal that runs that program was on maternity leave. So I was working with somebody specifically that had never really dealt with the school forest at all, and so it was just kind of an interim. So when the gal that runs the program came back, she said everything looked great, except there is a small strip. If you look at your maps, there's an original, and then there's the amended one. On the original one, you can see the boundary line does just on that western part of the soccer field touch that area, and it's not a huge deal. But let's say down the road we want to do something in that area where we're planting trees specifically or whatever, just for the legal description, we just want to make sure it's very clear. This is more just for the legal description of it than anything. But she just wanted to be really comfortable that if it was designated through the DNR as the school forest, that it was to their likings and in their description. And then when she came back, she also had a very good idea to request to add the portion on that northwest corner on that map. It's a smaller space, but there's a couple of reasons of why, right there, because that was not in the original resolution. The reason to add that would be in case there were an area of the other two areas that were starting to be overused, we could put those areas kind of, closed for a while and then use that section for more the sustainability of the forest. It is also closer to the end of the school where the Head Start / preschool will be now and the kindergarten classrooms. So where the door is for those classrooms, it's not far. So it would be a much easier walk for the younger kids than, all the way up and over by the soccer field and whatnot to access it. So just some more sustainability and also just accessibility. And then if we also had some children that had more special needs and weren't as mobile, they would have access to that school forest on that western corner there that they may not be able to potentially, depending on where some of the other classrooms would be heading up over the hill and stuff. So I just wanted to clarify why this was confusing, why we thought it was done, and then had to come back and revisit this. I hope that's helpful.
It is.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
I do have a question. As I know, I've attended some PTAs at Lowell, and the concern has always been when I've been at those meetings about parking and the flow of traffic. And I'd like to know if there's a plan to address that parking, and does this designation and designations of these sites impede that progress? Because, I mean, safety and traffic flow are definitely our main concerns. But I don't want to pit it as I want to tear down trees to lay down pavement. That's not my motive. It's that there is definitely a serious concern there going on.
Well, we haven't had any discussion about adding parking. I know that special events are a challenge at this site. It's also, flow of traffic has also been impeded by construction that was carried over the winter, and I know that Dave has been involved with that discussion as well. We are having more conversations about some things that might help to address that flow of traffic. We are moving some of our staff out of that building and into this building and other buildings in the district, so there will be a little bit there will be fewer staff members taking parking places in that spot. We're also looking at perhaps a hub model for immersion transportation to cut down on the number of parents who are dropping off in the morning with immersion programs. We don't have all the details of that yet, but it is something that we're exploring, and I think that would reduce the traffic flow quite a bit in the morning and after school. As far as future construction at the site, I wouldn't be able to speak to that quite at this point, but I don't know if there came a day where the immersion programs grew so large or population in that area grew so large, then we most likely have to revisit that.
Thank you so much for coming in. Thanks so much for all your work on this. I was involved with Lester Park School Forest, and I know it took a lot of steps to get to where you guys are at. So I just want to thank you for staying with it and making it happen. And just not so specific to Lowell, but can you just, David Spooner, we have a school forest at Lester Park, at Homecroft, at East, now at Lowell. What other sites do we have the designated school forest?
I used to know that answer a year ago, but I think those are the only 4 sites. East High School, I think, too.
East has
you mentioned East, okay.
Is Stowe's designated through the... I don't think it's gotten that designation. That's what I thought too.
No, I don't think so.
It's not the state designated yet. I don't believe, but.
So I think it's only 4,
okay,
but I'm
okay. Great. Well,
not confident.
Thanks again. Look forward to coming out and seeing it when it's nicer weather.
Right. I just wanted to follow up on my question. How hard is it to change the footprint of a school forest once we pass it? That would be my only concern. I don't want to have to lock ourselves into a 100-year designation or something like that would cause an issue to future growth.
I don't have a question. I don't have an answer for that question. It's certainly a very good question.
That is a question that I could reach out to the DNR because I'm sure they would have that answer. I don't off the top of my head.
I think it would be important to get that clarification because I know parking and just the general flow of traffic there is really of concern for a lot of folks. Wonderful. Any other questions on this discussion item? Thank you so much for coming. Absolutely. And thanks for all your hard work for our kids. We appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
That is the second of the 2 resolutions that we have.
And we'll have the answer to that question before we formally vote on it. Right. Okay, thank you.
Well, with that comment, can I then, so if this has already been accepted, this whole journey to being a forest designee at Lowell. So what would change if we heard that from the DNR that this is a 100-year deal, if it's already, unless, are we just voting to add that little piece?
The adjustment was to add that piece and to change a piece on the bottom. So it's a revision of what was already passed.
Presumably, if and we'll want to confirm it, but presumably if they are open to us making this change here and that change there, that at a later time, if there was a circumstance that necessitated an expansion to the building, there would be a way to do it, but we'll want to confirm that.
So I would not like to be at the board meeting next week and find out that that the DNR tells us that this is permanent here. So if there's any further ideas that we've got to add to this building site or rearrange our parking, then I'm not comfortable right now, without discussing this further, as a new board member, I don't, agreeing to give this extra, without conversation. I don't even know what this is, to tell you the truth. I don't even know what a designated forest is, nor have I seen one at East or Leicester, and I don't quite know what your visions are for this and whether or not adding pieces of land is really in our best interest at this point when we've got a growing immersion program there and the chances of growing and some concerns of parking, which I have never known. So I'd really appreciate if this is going to be something we have to vote on Tuesday, that we table it, because I don't know enough about it to give it a right to more land on this topic.
I'm confident that we'll have clarification on this that we can share with the board, and then you can decide whether or not it's something that you're ready to act on or not.
Then the other conversation I'd have is I like that little new piece because of the connection to closer to the doors for the little ones to get out. So would there be a compromise that the board would say that we might delete some other property, or is that already set in stone? We can't give this and take away this.
Sorry, I don't have an answer for you on that.
Yeah, Member Lofold, I was just going to say that maybe, I don't know if you had a chance to read through some of the background information, but it did kind of review a bit more, but also if you go on the DNR website, they have just a whole section on school forest and kind of the background on that. So that might be of interest to your background learning as well.
Okay, so we'll get that follow-up information, certainly with the ability to table this vote if we need to. Member Lofold and and with other members who have some potential concerns about how this could impact future growth on a already full site with some already pretty significant safety concerns for families. Okay, next.
We now move into the informational section with expenditure contracts, revenue contracts, no cost or other contracts, not mentioning all of them, but facilities management, capital project status report, levy referendum, legislative platform update, property sale updates, and the PEIP insurance premium update. If it's okay with you, I'd like to start with the last one, and I apologize, I don't know that there's any documentation that I got to you on this. We did have a meeting with PEIP representatives. That's the statewide organization that facilitates school districts and other local governmental entities to participate in the state insurance plan. And our premium renewal for the July 2018 through June 2019 plan year is a 4.5% increase. In the big picture, that's not too bad. I think you'll see many employers experience insurance increases on a year-to-year basis that are well in excess of that, oftentimes even in the double digits. We had previously projected as part of our budget process a 6% increase, so this is a step down from that. I shouldn't do this, but I kind of got my hopes up. Though PEIP is effectively one statewide pool, there are school districts and local governments that are part of the July renewal, and there are also school districts and local government entities that are part of the January renewal. The January renewal was less than 1%. Now, realistically, I figured we wouldn't be fortunate enough to have an increase that low, but you kind of, again, you kind of get your hopes up when you hear that, and you can think, well, maybe a 1 or a 2 would be okay. And I think we did have a 2.8 last year. So big picture, 4.5 is pretty darn good. Might not be as good as we might have wanted, but it's still pretty good.
Just coming on the heels of working with an insurance group last week with a 22% increase in their last year's premiums, I will happily take 4.5, which is way below industry standards. So, especially this day and age with the skyrocketing costs of this stuff. So that's great. But we will be getting additional information on this because it wasn't in our packet.
I'd be happy to package up some information to include in the board report.
Okay, thank you.
Summarizing what I've basically told you.
Member Oswald?
Can you just remind me how much we had budgeted in our budget option for the PIP, and is that?
If you'll allow me to go with what's off the top of my head, I believe the original projection I provided you in January was tracking about a $760,000 increase. So it's not that large, but the exact number that corresponds to the 4.5% increase isn't coming back to me at the moment, but it's going to be less than the 760 that was originally projected. Yes.
And along those lines, just a quick question, maybe you're going to get to this, I apologize, but when can we start to expect some continued budget documents following our work last week?
What do you have in mind? I'm sorry.
Well, as we're moving down the budget discussion road between now and June, I'm just curious if you could give us some general updates on when we'll be seeing.
Be happy to give you general updates. Really where we are at this point is we've moved forward with preparing staffing allocation sheets for all our buildings. Those have been provided to our building principals. That happened right before spring break. We have a meeting, I believe, Wednesday of this week where we're going to get together with building principals and gather their input on what they see on those staff allocation sheets, and that will then be putting us on a trajectory to finalize the final budget that'll be brought to the board in June. And as we move between now and June, we'll be happy to update you on any changes as we're moving in that direction.
I think we would all like to be seeing those updates as we go along, so that would be great. Thank you for that update. Do we just want to work backward? Anything else on the insurance premium update? Okay.
Nothing from me.
All right. Do you want to work backwards on that list? That'd be helpful. Or we can start over at the expenditure contracts.
Since the expenditure, the revenue, and the no-cost contracts are of standard format, I would open that up to you, that if there's a particular interest you have on any of the information you see on those documents, be happy to hear that from you now.
Can you remind us what Bridget Eckwood, that the contract that she's doing for workshops, what is that again? I think I asked this at the last one because or one of the last ones, because her contract wasn't included. Do you remember what that was for?
I can't remember. Was that the literacy workshops?
I don't
I'd have
recall.
to look back. I don't recall.
Okay.
I don't think it was Bridget Eckwood. I thought it was another.
Maybe it was another one. Yeah, one was through the Office of Equity. You're right. Yep.
And I think it was from kind of what the art and the poetry and the dance, the music that is part of that. Can I just make a quick observation? Just, when I looked at the expenditure contracts that you signed, and I see that, so the way that CITS works in our district is we pay the colleges to offer those classes.
Right. We pay
That just baffles me.
a per credit cost to the colleges. That is part of the regular or general fund dollars that we get. We would much rather pay the per credit cost of CITS than to go PSEO and completely lose it.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but that, so in actuality, when our students are so happy and that they get these college credits, what the general public probably doesn't know is that, so they go to college with those credits, they don't have to pay college, but it does come out of their local general education school district's budget. So in fact, we're funding a little bit of their college education.
Yeah.
And so marketing-wise and messaging-wise and communication-wise, I think that would be a nice thing to get out there, that yes, we're supportive and look at all that we do to enhance that. But they do get free college credit, but our local high schools are paying for those free college credits. But I would imagine that turns around and we get a per pupil unit for that student for being here. So I suppose that's why the colleges will charge us.
Well, it's we get the same per pupil funding, whether they're in the CITS or not. So it really does take away from the whole when we're paying for those credits. There are some school districts who pass along that credit charge to students who want the credit. However, we haven't done that.
Okay. And then just my follow-up is, so I see Lake Superior College on this month's contract signed, but I would imagine we've signed some for Fond du Lac and for UMD and others.
Yes, I believe for CITS there is really language for each of the classes that we offer those credits for at each of the colleges.
And you were going to speak to F, and I would also like us to make sure we go through G and H too. So do you want to start? Was there anything on A through, where are we?
I wasn't sure if we were going forwards or backwards.
I wasn't really either. A little confused. We started backwards, and now I think we started it forwards again.
I'm not either.
Any questions on A through D?
We're on 7, right? So
6. Who's on first? Okay, we're just going to start at A next time because I think going to I was a little. So any questions on E, the facilities management and capital project status report?
I don't have a specific question, but I just wanted David, to, is there anything in your report that you are particularly proud of, happy with, challenged with?
They're all opportunities, and they're all challenges, and I guess I would have to review it and see if there's anything that really fits to your question.
Sometimes just in this meeting, we get to this part of the agenda and we quickly go through your report, and so I just wanted to give you that opportunity, I guess.
If I could prompt Mr. Spooner, I believe that today was the first day of a new employee in your office.
Right. We had a retirement. Guy Grensing retired after 33 years. I don't know if many of you know Guy Grensing, but he was a real key person to our office. He was our draftsperson, AutoCAD. An example might be the DNR forest drawings we just looked at. Guy would have created those, and he was the person that could do anything in our office. And he retired, and we have a new person that started today, Danielle. And she's got some big shoes to fill, but I think she'll do real well, and we're happy to have her, and we'll see how it goes.
And had she been in another position in our district, or was she hired outside our district?
Both. She was working outside and part-time as a para. I think the report my facilities report is really long this time, and I can't quickly go through it and pick out anything in particular. They're all challenges. I could go through every one and probably talk for 10 minutes, but I don't want to take up everybody's time tonight. Is there anything that you have in particular that...
I think we always appreciate how concise and thorough your reports are. They're always some of the easiest to read. And
No, I wrote this report before the odor issue came up at Congdon, but I didn't hear anything about it today, which is a good thing. So we thought it was a mouse. A mouse or something had died in a closet and it smelled. Or a rat or something.
Oh my gosh.
I guess the only thing that I would call attention to, and I did send an email, but the Lakewood roof project will be ramping up here pretty quick, and if I missed anything in the email or missed out on any information that you would like, just feel free to let me know. That'll be starting in early May, and that's a good project to get done. It's been deferred for a couple of years now, and that roof is in tough shape. So we are doing it during school. There's a lot of roof work going on this summer, so we didn't, ultimately I found out that it would have been in school either May or September. It would have impacted our staff and students no matter what we did. But by starting early, we're saving a substantial amount of money.
And did you use the same procurement now that I'm fascinated with this procurement process that you had at Rockridge? No, you use a different plan?
This is U.S. Communities.
Okay. But similar in terms of how you budget, how we plan financially for it?
Pardon, I didn't.
Is it similar? Is the financial planning and forecasting process similar? It's totally different.
10-year plan, the 10-year plan document, the number that's put in that document is a forecast that Carrie had done in the past or that I do now. We don't really have actual numbers until we bid the project out or get numbers from like NJPA or for cooperative purchasing. It's either until we bid it or until we get numbers from a cooperative purchasing agency. We really don't know the exact cost, but we're always close. I better knock on wood. I shouldn't have said that.
Just kind of a fun comment. So on Saturday, we had our state speech qualifying meet, and East High School hosted it, and we had judges from around the region. Jill knows where they're all from, but I was kind of in charge of the hospitality room for them. And many of them were former teachers and have gone as judges to schools all over. And they just are so impressed with our schools here. And It was fun to be a school board member working in that room and talking with different teachers from around former teachers from around the district, and just how much they think, how great they think our new schools are. So both here as well as Denfeld, but
yeah, thank you.
Kudos.
We just have a great team that really works hard and they do their best, and we're not overstaffed by any means, but everybody does a really good job and works really hard, and we all take pride in what we do.
And I take pride too as I travel around and I see that just the cleanliness of our buildings. So here we're there on a Saturday, and I'm in buildings a lot of Saturdays throughout the state, and even though we have skeleton crew, and I know that they're also very proud of the work they do, but our building looks much stronger from classrooms to restrooms to hallways on a Saturday. Our buildings shine compared to what we see throughout our state, so kudos to that too.
Well, thank you. Then the only other update I would have would be the Ordini's gym floor that Jill mentioned. And that won't be until late summer, but that has been on the 10-year plan for a number of years. It's been pushed back, and essentially the floor looks pretty dark now because it's probably got, I'm guessing, 25 coats of wax on it. That will be sanded down, taken down to raw wood, and be refinished, and it will look like new. There'll be 2 new gym curtains. They'll have their logo. The bleachers will be tuned up. It'll be a nice gym when it's done. And that'll occur in August.
Great, thank you.
Those are the 2 bigger projects.
Okay. Any other questions on facilities and maintenance? Legislative platform priorities. There's a lot of red new circles on that. Do you want to walk us through some of the highlights, Superintendent Grunstedt?
Are we?
I'm sorry, I was going in order again. Are we now not going in order?
Well, that's levy. So.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead. Why don't you just go ahead?
I'm so confused. Yeah, levy. We have received the kind of some draft questions from Leatherman and Associates, and have a meeting set up. I believe Chair Kirby's scheduled or scheduling a board member to be with us to go over those draft questions, as well as some of the Think Kids information that has come in, to make sure that we're incorporating that into those polling questions, and look forward to that coming up in the next couple of weeks, so that in May we'll be able to more develop a question. I know Doug has reached out to some of our legal representatives to help us in, as we formulate that language, make sure that we're all legal with how the questions are asked and designed, and the amounts that we would be asking for. So.
Okay. And with that, when you meet with Morris and Leatherman to discuss that, will they be giving us a timeline? Because don't we have to have the language in place by July in order for it to be approved on the ballot? So we're getting pretty tight on timelines.
I'm looking at Doug, but it's either July or August, but
either way, that's 3 or 4 months, so that's a little bit.
It's on the timeline.
Okay,
and we've
but we'll
talked
get the
through
timeline
with them. Yeah.
Okay, we'll get to see a timeline that they've put together for when stuff is going to start rolling out, because we'll obviously be getting asked about it.
Yep.
Okay. Yep. Anything else on the levy? We're back on track here.
I just want to echo Member Trinka's concern. I hear it in my neighborhood, and I don't know. I mean, some people just think that somehow we're not on a timeline. Like, why aren't we talking about the levy? Why aren't we seeing things about the levy? And, when are we? And I keep assuring them that, as a district, the leadership is working on it, that coming to the board, I'm not even sure where that lies in our need to know everything. I just kind of assure them that our district is certainly. So the levy, the vote is in November, just because it will appear on the ballot when we are balloting for other officers. And so traditionally, I just remember from my own experience that it's a heavy push from like September, October. Mm-hmm. And that the need to do anything now is rather early, even though you guys are meeting with it.
Well, we really started working on this last year by going through some training, and we've been doing internal work on the referendum. Think Kids was really referendum focused, talking about our priorities as we move forward, talking about the sunsetting referendum and the need to really put what our priorities want to be into the next referendum, so that we're building a question that people can get behind and believe in and support. And so even though it doesn't say referendum on it, it's all part of that conversation about what do we value and believe as a community, and what do we want a diploma to mean, and what experiences and opportunities do we want our kids to have. And then the next question that comes through the polling piece of this is, how much are we willing to invest as a community in these priorities, and how long do we want that to last? And so that gets to the deeper part of those questions. And then in May, you'll work as a board to really say, all right, this is what our ask is, this is what it's going to support. And then from May then till November is information sharing, first with our staff in the spring with a kind of a road trip, if you will, to all of our buildings, so that all of our staff have an understanding of what we're looking for. Throughout the summer, we'll be visiting different organizations, and then in the fall, be really working towards getting that information out to everyone in the community. There's also a community group that has started, and they're doing some grassroots community work. That's really important too. And so they've invited me to a few meetings to share some information with them, so that they can start building support in their group in the community as well. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes right now to gear up for that.
So then just a follow-up, should this board expect to have a few more special meetings in the month of May as we are then brought together as a school board to look at the surveys and to look at the Think Kids things, and then eventually it's this board that says, you've done all the work, but we get to look at all the data and say, these are the questions, this is the amount, and then we make that. So we might have some more extra meetings in May? Okay. I'll look forward to those dates so we can best be there. And
it wouldn't be multiple like the budget. It would probably be.
So referendum or levy, or it's a levy referendum. What's the language? Is it a referendum? Is it a levy? Or is it a levy referendum?
It's a levy referendum.
It is, okay.
So it's a referendum to vote on a levy.
I was just going to add to that. I think from being involved with a lot of our referendum campaigns over the years, that it is typical that August is when the board votes on the language of it for a November election vote, and that there will be a lot of opportunities you can share with people as you're talking to get involved, to learn, to help, particularly with the grassroots committee. And so be collecting those names and be sharing those names with the grassroots committee, because I know from experience of being a part of those grassroots committees, we need all the help we can get from August through November. But this is a pretty typical process that Superintendent just described, and timeline.
Any other discussion on the levy referendum update? Okay, legislative platform update.
Jackie has been doing an amazing job of updating that report, and she gets all fancy with the news sticker next to items that were not on last month's report. They are back in session today after 10 days off. The last I had heard was that the omnibus bill in the House was vetoed, and so they have some more work to do. And that's kind of what we're keeping an eye on right now. And I just was emailing with Representative Olson and Senator Simonson this morning about some different items, looking for some maybe some updates, some inside scoop on some of the information. But otherwise, there's a lot to follow, for sure.
Any other questions, any specific questions folks have on the legislative platform piece?
When you
Member
just said the
Wilford?
omnibus, what one is the what does that mean?
The spending bill.
The what?
The
spending
omnibus
bill?
tax bill. I know there's a number, I can't remember the top of,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not on it.
off the top of my head.
Okay.
Just a general question. Chair Kirby, I believe you were at the Saturday
City town hall.
town hall meeting. Yeah. Was anything mentioned at that meeting about any of these bills or special education by our legislators?
Member Oswald was there too. I don't remember. They
There's
talked generally
A little bit about school safety, but
school
other
safety.
than that, no.
That was it, right. I
There-
think Representative Olson gave a good shout out supporting education though, so, but nothing specific.
And as these are moving through the process at the state capitol, you will be provided updates, right? Great. Okay. Any other discussion on that? That is a very long list. Please thank Jackie for us, because that's really great. And then I think the last thing that we have is any updates on the sale of properties and where you're at with Realtor, because I believe the last time we met, you were going to sit down to finalize that contract. So we would appreciate an update.
We have exchanged draft proposals on the listing agreement, and as of earlier this afternoon, we have come to terms on the terms of that agreement. It's not yet signed, but I think we've resolved all the issues that were there. There weren't many, and we're scheduled to meet with Mr. Fulmer on Friday of this week to go forward with the process of listing and marketing these properties.
Great. Any other questions on that from folks? I appreciate you continuing to push that along. And maybe as soon as it's listed, you can send it out to all the school board members so that we can, yep, that would be great. Thank you.
But there's been no interest, do you not get any interest in that property when it's not listed by a firm?
There have been a number of people who approach us from time to time. I will say that we received the most attention when a local newspaper ran a April Fool's story that it had been sold for $1 to Quick Trip. And I think we responded to, I don't know how many you got. I got a couple of people.
I had one phone call today.
I had some yesterday at my church too.
Yeah, so it was in the Reader. I think that was a spoof for April Fools, and some people took that story as face value. Other than that, I think the most common question that we get is about SDC, and there's really, it is a wonderful building. It could be used for many different things. There are some challenges with it Right now, it is one big parcel of land, and to break that into multiple parcels, we would need a public road with
Utilities.
Yeah, and the utilities currently come from the main site across, and so you'd have to have an easement going across the whole property for the infrastructure. Unless you had new infrastructure and a road through it, we wouldn't be able to sell just that one piece. That has been the case for probably, I don't know, the last 10 years. There have been many people that were interested in just that piece, but so that is the challenge, and that is why we haven't been able to just sell certain pieces of that property. So that is some of the work that we're doing with the state and the county, is to help someone have a plan and some added resources to be able to address the challenges of the site.
I know that we talked about this in campaigns a little bit, but and I would love to have just a quick email from someone who could give me the information, because I often get pushed a little bit about that their tax dollars are paying for these empty buildings and they want them sold or given away or whatever. And so I remember at some point somebody gave us a little bit of a snippet about what a taxpayer in Duluth, Minnesota is paying property-wise for our neglect of selling those buildings. And it's not anything I need, by next week or anything, but I don't know if anybody else on the board would like that little information, or maybe you know it already, because I get asked it a lot, and I would just like to be able to tell them something.
Yeah, I know we've had some numbers before on maintenance, but
Right. I have the cost of the vacant buildings and what the annual cost is, but I don't know. Doug would have to correlate it to a taxpayer impact. I can provide what we spend in a year per building.
I talked about that a little bit too.
I actually have an email from this fall that I think I got some numbers from you, Mr. Spooner, that might be what Member Lofold is referring to, so I'd be glad to share it back to you to see if those numbers are still correct, and then you can do what you want with it in terms of getting the information to us. But it was also in response to some questions I had that you shared that information for me to share. So I still have that email, and then the other question or just comment, Mr. Spooner, can you just share briefly? So the facilities is housed up in Summit Central, and so it might just be helpful for people to be able to explain that we are still using some of that space for space.
Correct. Everybody's familiar with the SDC main building, which is the closest to the lake with a view. We have the 1970s Central High School, the big building in the center. And then behind that building was the SDC annex that had some technology programs. And we have the facilities management, for the most part, our entire department in that building. We have carpenters, painters, the plumbing position was there, heating, ventilation, myself, our draftsperson, AutoCAD tech, health and safety coordinator, our facilities technology person. We occupy that building in entirety, and when we sell that, we'll have to figure out where we go with, it might be the basement here, but figuring out where vans and tools and everything that goes along with a maintenance operation, where that would fit. But we fully use that building up there, and we police the property. When I leave at night, I check the building and then I drive around and chase people off and lock the gate. So we are on the property every day.
Is it true that there's broken windows and just utter chaos outside of that building?
I think in maybe November maybe last year, Jana asked the question she had been asked by resident of Duluth, and when I went back in history, I think I found 1 or 2 or 3 windows that had been broken, nothing like what was publicly stated. We probably have more vandalism at Nettleton downtown than we do up on the hill. It's pretty quiet in the wintertime. When Lori, our executive assistant, or I leave at night, whoever's the last person out, we chase people out, but they're people that are up there for the view. And it's not people that are typically vandalizing, especially in the wintertime. It's too cold for the kids to vandalize.
So people just walk up the hill, just sit in that parking lot and look at the view?
Correct. They drive up and they just look at the view, and they might be from out of town.
The backside.
So,
Backside. You can get up and drive side?
right. Portia Johnson off of South Blackman. That's how we enter. That's how we get there, and we open that gate in the morning, and then Lori or I lock that at night.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate, again, that this continues to show up on our agendas. Got to sell those suckers. Lots coming up in terms of future items. Any other discussion? Otherwise, we'll conclude the business committee meeting for today. Great, thank you. Thanks to staff again for all your hard work.